Hi folks, this is Melanie Blow. I'm guest lecturing for Professor Jen's class again. Talking today about barriers to disclosure for sexual abuse, which all of you guys who are going to have anything to do with criminal justice, any of you guys who are going to be voters, who are going to serve on juries, who have any intention of ever functioning in this adult world had better understand. And I think I'm going to help you with that. So, when I was 13, I was raped by my father. No one ever in the history of mankind has any child ever experienced that, got up and said, you know what, I'm a crime victim now, I'm going to go call the police. Even when a kid is abused by someone who isn't a member of their family, that is not how they process it. A kid, you process something like that by trying to survive it, and that's it. And whatever parts of your mind and your body need to shut down, shut down. And you try to push it out of your mind. It's very different from forgetting it. You just don't think about it. You don't let it enter your mind. At 13, I had a reasonably good idea. I mean, I was at 13 in, I think, 1991. I had heard about, I knew what rape was, more or less. I knew about child sexual abuse, more or less. So, but there's a huge stigma attached to that. It's this enormously dirty label to place on yourself. It's this enormously ugly place to walk into. So, yes, I was aware that these things existed, but I'm sure that whatever had happened to me wasn't that. And even if that hadn't been an issue, I still didn't want to, what am I going to do? What's a kid going to do? I didn't have any real extended family who I was close with. I didn't want to go into foster care. I grew up in a small town. Reading the police blotter was a major source of entertainment. Foster parents were getting arrested every week for sexual abuse of their foster children. That was really not something I wanted any part of. So I didn't tell anyone. I knew that I had a very good instinctive feeling that if I told my mother, nothing good was going to happen. So that was it. I was raped by my father. I took a shower. I went to school the next day, and the next day, and then there was a weekend somewhere, and I went to school the Monday after that. And life goes on. And you don't dwell on it any more than you have to, but life goes on. And so, shortly a few months after that, an uncle of mine started visiting who I never even met before. And he started molesting me. Once again, now this time, what he was doing at first was much less physical. He was fondling me through my clothes and things like that. So, okay, well, I didn't tell anyone about my father. Why am I going to tell anyone about my uncle? And that's the mindset. And with the uncle, he would visit, and then I wouldn't see him again for a couple months, and he'd visit, and I wouldn't see him for a couple of months. So compared to what happened with my father, that seemed perfectly fine. That seemed like, what is even to tell? When I was 16, okay, so that was a couple of years of my life. That was about 3 years of my life. And so much of the way they portray it, so much of the way people who don't really understand this but want to sound like they understand this, so much of the things they say are just so confusing and inaccurate. Your life doesn't dissolve. Your relationship with your parents does not become negated or changed in a huge way. I mean, they're still your parents. All the good stuff that happened, all the bad stuff that happened is still part of the picture. You trust them much less. You're not necessarily aware of that. You're angry at them a lot more, but you're not necessarily aware of that. You don't make all these connections. But that's the way it is. when I was 16, my mother found out about my uncle, because my uncle talked about wanting to have sex with me in front of my mother, in front of my sister, in front of my aunt, in front of my aunt and uncle's kids, my cousins. My mom I remember the next day, my little sister had like a part-time job. My mom picked the two of us up from school, which was normal. She dropped my sister off, took me back home, changed out of her work clothes, like went into the bathroom, told me to stand outside the bathroom door while she was changing, and asked me what my uncle and I had been doing together. Not what he had been doing to me, what we had been doing together, like, this was just some sexual tryst of mine. So I told her, I think she wanted to make sure I wasn't pregnant. Hi, therapy dog once again. So, we had that lovely conversation through a closed door. And she's like, okay, I'll make sure this doesn't happen again. Which I don't know how she expected to do that, because she didn't do anything. Guys still kept coming back. So, okay, so then, at this point, the secret that I was trying to keep just because it was more convenient and more comfortable and easier for me to keep, now my whole family knows about it. And even when you're a teenager, even when you're 16 and you think you're so independent from your family and everything, you're not. Your family is still a huge part of your universe. It still is mostly what defines your universe. So if your family knows this is going on, to you, it's the same as the whole world knows. If your family doesn't care, it's the same as the whole world not caring. So, okay, so I was 16 years old. This is why I didn't really tell anybody. And I can't even imagine now, as an adult, if I had told a teacher or something like that, I can't even imagine how that would have played out. I told my therapist and she almost died. I just cannot imagine. Plus, the other thing in my situation, this is not unheard of but not common either. I went to the same school that my mother was a teacher in. So that meant my school would never have done anything to betray a teacher. That's just very much not the way it went. So, and I knew that. I knew that I would never, in some ways, I would never get a fair shake at anything in that school. So that was just the reality of my life. So I went to college, and that was an amazing experience. And never forget this. I know that statistically, that's where the socioeconomics of abuse start to play out, is in college, because statistically a lot of survivors don't make it that far. But plenty do. And while 20% of your campus is probably not composed of survivors, the way the general total statistical population of the United States is, there's still a lot of them there. So never forget that, you guys. Among your ranks, there are some people who are trying really, 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 really hard to put their life back together, and trying really, really, really hard for you not to figure that out. So I got to college, and I'm like, oh my God, this is a place where people treat me decently. This is a place where no one raises their voice at anybody else, or nobody raises their hand at anybody else. Nobody knew me, unlike a small town where everybody knew me. So it was a clean break. I'll tell you a funny story. I was so afraid of being alone with men, because I didn't have any brothers growing up. I didn't have any male cousins who I was particularly close with. I dated a little bit, and you date in high school, that's a sexual thing. When you date a kid in high school, you desperately want places alone with them so you can have sex. I had no concept of men being trustworthy, and you hear about date rape and things like that, and it seemed to me the logical way to prevent that was to avoid being alone with guys. Every single dorm in my college was co-ed. in the dorm I was in, every floor was co-ed. There were just, think of the dorm as basically a square building. 2 of the halls were men, 2 of the halls were women. I lived on the corner, so every place I went, there were guys. And it terrified me. Very early on, I remember I was afraid to walk down the hall. If there was a guy sitting out studying in the hall or something like that, and I'd be alone with him, I was sure that was giving him carte blanche to rape me. Finally, having to go to the bathroom very, very badly and having to go through a guy-filled hallway to get to the bathroom was how I got over that fear. And lo and behold, I'd walk by guys on my way to the bathroom most days, and nothing bad ever happened whatsoever. And kind of at that point, the male species got a little more trustworthy to me. But yeah, so college, I was trying to learn how to wrap my mind around what it was like to have a future as an adult, what that meant. And still, hear this stuff about sexual abuse and it ruins people, it ruins people, it ruins people, da 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 da. I didn't feel ruined. I really didn't. I was really feeling pretty good. I was starting to think about the future. I was starting to get optimistic about my life. I didn't want to wear that label. So the only way to not wear that label is just deny that it ever happened. So that worked for a couple of years. I made it through college, made it to early adulthood. I got a job when I was just after I turned 22. I earned a living wage job. I got an apartment. It was great. I was living with a guy who I was very serious with. In a lot of ways, life was really good. I was getting to experience a lot of freedom, realizing, I'm earning money. I can go, and I bought a car. Now I have this new car. I can drive all over the United States with this thing. Started taking road trips, started going to rock concerts, things like that, really experiencing some perks. I was also starting to have trouble with depression and with anxiety and things like that. And that, I think really part of the freedom and some of the success and everything like that I was experiencing really is the biggest reason why I didn't completely succumb to the depression and the anxiety. But still, I didn't want, and it's somewhere in the back of my mind, I was kind of realizing that, you know what, I hate to say this, but sexual abuse really is the word for what happened to me when I was a kid. So maybe I should, think about doing something about this. So back then, the internet did exist. It didn't exist the way it was now. There were some resources for survivors out there. They weren't very good, by and large. A few of them were. I wanted to definitely go online and learn about this, and because I was absolutely certain I could never, ever, ever, ever utter the words, I was sexually abused as a child. I remember actually when I was in college and my uncle was still alive, he never paid any attention to my sister until I went to college. Suddenly I'm in college and he's talking to my sister and doing all of the things that the term for it is grooming. He started grooming her. And she was telling me this on the phone one time. And as much as she was aware of what happened with me, she's my sister, I loved her, I wanted to warn her. And I couldn't get the words out. I couldn't say, be careful with him, you know what he did to me. And she's my sister, she's my favorite person. That's just how utterly convinced I was that I couldn't say those words. So I went online, I started learning a little bit about child sexual abuse. Eventually, I started actually volunteering with an organization and just setting up informational displays about child abuse in general. I learned through all of the stuff that I was reading, one of the things they say is, it's not your fault, it's not your fault. That kind of sunk in, especially as I was interacting with other survivors, it kind of sunk in. I still didn't go to therapy, I still didn't do anything like that. I saw a lot of advice about forgiveness. And I still wanted a relationship with my family at that point. when you don't feel like you really have, I mean, that's a very normal, basic thing to want, is a relationship with your family. If you don't get it, you want it more, at least for a point, unless till you can completely grow up and completely make the decision that this is useless to me. And I wasn't there yet. I wasn't there when I was 21. I wasn't there when I was 22. I really wanted that relationship. I wasn't there when I was 23, or when I turned 23. And I actually did realize there was a statute of limitations in New York. I think I'm the only survivor I know who did, but I did realize that. And I wanted that relationship, and I wanted forgiveness, and I wanted all that stuff I never had before, so I made the choice not to do anything. And my uncle was dead by this point, just if that simplifies things in your minds, but my father was still alive. And then when I was 24, I learned that my father had molested another little girl. And they almost arraigned him, but they didn't. They just didn't have enough evidence. The kid was young. Her family did not want her to go through this, so she didn't. And since then, I've become aware of, oh my, counting on my fingers. I think 5 other victims of his who I've known of, who I'm certain of. My father was a high school, actually the year after, September after he raped me, he started teaching in high school. So there's a lot more victims of his out there, I'm sure. I figure he taught 2,000 kids while he was in high school. I'm not aware of any of them who have come forward, but it's unlikely that I would either. Statistically, it takes on average of 20-point-something years for survivors to come forward. This was just revealed in a study that came out in December of 2013. So actually, I'm really, in a lot of ways, I'm ahead of the curve. I'm glad that I can talk about this now. I'm glad that I'm at the point that I'm at. I really, really wish I had the option of legal justice, just so that I would not have to worry about what my father's doing all the time. Just that I would not have this burden on me, not so I'd have this as a part of my life. Just this was something, I don't like to think of forgiving myself, that's even the context that I should see this as, but it's very hard not to. That's about it. But what I want you to realize is that kids statistically very rarely tell. You see it on the news because that's the only way those cases go to court most of the time. The kids rarely tell. They have a lot of reasons for that. A lot of times they don't have anyone to talk to who's going to believe them. Adults need to be able to access justice. That's the only way there's going to be fewer victims. So that's where I come in. That's why I'm trying to change the laws. My petition is up on paperbagladies.org. I've talked about this before. I'm going to talk about it again. But thanks a lot. And I want you guys to understand this. I just want you guys to understand that it takes a while. It takes a long time. When you guys become police officers or whatever else, realize a kid is never going to disclose the day after it happens. I hope now you understand it a little better. Okay, folks, thanks a lot. Bye-bye.